Don't just stand there. Do something. How many times have you been in a place where you've said those words, or you wanted to say those words, or heard someone say those words? Today we hear a version of that in the story of the ascension of Jesus. In the beginning of the book of Acts, the risen Lord instructs the disciples to stay in Jerusalem and wait for the coming of the promised Holy Spirit. And he reminds them that they will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon them, and they will be his witnesses. And after Jesus says this, as the disciples are watching, Jesus is lifted up and a cloud takes him out of their sight. And as they're standing there gazing up into heaven, these two men in white robes ask the disciples, "Why are you looking up into heaven?" In other words, why are you just standing there? And the disciples go back to Jerusalem, to the room where they're staying, and we read that all of these were constantly devoting themselves to prayer, together with certain women, including Mary, the mother of Jesus, as well as his brothers. So they were together again. I have to wonder what it means to be a certain woman, but that's a sermon for another day, okay? What we do know is that the disciples did not just keep standing there. It wasn't like the time Jesus was on the mountain with Peter and James and John, and he was transfigured, and the figures of Elijah and Moses were there, and they wanted to make these booths or these dwellings to capture the moment. No, this time they saw Jesus ascend, and they didn't try to capture that moment right there and then. They got it. They knew that they needed to get moving and go and continue the work that Jesus had called them to do. They were reminded of the promise that Jesus had made at the Last Supper, that Jesus was praying for them to continue this work, and that they could expect the Holy Spirit, an advocate, to come to give them the courage and the strength and the power to be his witnesses. Jesus reminds the disciples at the Last Supper that he is confident that not only will they continue to do his work, they will do even greater work than he has done. And he prays that they will be one, that they will work together on this important ministry. We are witnesses. We are not called to be standing around looking up into the clouds. We are called to be witnesses of the risen Christ who defied those powers of death, who returned to empower the disciples to continue that ministry of teaching and preaching and healing and proclaiming hope and grace and love. As some of you know, in the history of our church, way back when, Easter was at the center of the church year, and that was followed by the festival of the Ascension. And over the years, our congregation, like others, shifted from Easter being the center of the year and Ascension to Christmas. But that, too, is another topic for another sermon. But when I was serving congregations in Berks County, Pennsylvania, Ascension Day was a big deal. It was a big deal among the Old Order Mennonites and some of the Mennonite communities living in the county. And our old churches of German Reformed and Lutheran background used to have big Ascension Day services. And many of the older members of those congregations remembered that it was this incredibly holy and special day of the church year. And on Ascension Day in Fleetwood, we would see the Mennonites riding their bicycles or their buggies to worship. There was no work on this day, which when I found out what the word was in German, I just have to say I went to that 12-year-old boy humor, because the word in German for ascension is Himmelfahrt. So you just have to teach some young boys a word like that and they go with it. But that is the German word, literally Himmelfahrt, translated heaven journey. And older members of Pennsylvania German descent, including some members of those congregations I served, had all of these interesting traditions and sayings and warnings about Himmelfahrt. It was said that if you sewed anything on Ascension Day, your seams would not stay. They would come undone, because nothing should be fastened on Ascension Day. It went with the symbolism of Jesus being risen into heaven. And there was a special tea that people would make with like 7 or 9 different kinds of herbs that was supposed to be a special tea for Ascension Day. And that was a big deal. And it was a big deal here at Evangelical Reformed Church. Part of that is our German heritage. And if you look in the narthex of the church, you can see this incredible photo of a service from the late 1800s when this whole chancel area was draped in fabric and filled with flowers and adorned with these flower bouquets every place. It was elaborately worship in marking the Ascension. And the Sunday school had the program with each grade level presenting recitations and musical numbers. There was lots of hymn singing, but those decorations and the draping of cloth and all those flowers, it was a big deal. And part of the reason why it was a big deal was it was the reminder of how we take the risen Jesus out into the world. Ascension Day was the day where the congregation said, this is what it means to be the church. Yes, we celebrate that Jesus was born at Christmas, and we ask ourselves how Jesus can be born anew in our hearts each year. We celebrate Jesus' resurrection at Easter, and we ask ourselves, how can we experience new life? But with the Ascension, it's time to get moving. How will we be witnesses of that new life and that new birth? How will we continue the work of Jesus? Ascension Day was a big deal because of the Big Commission, or what we call the Great Commission, from Jesus to go out and be witnesses of all these things to the ends of the earth. To the ends of the earth, to preach and teach and to serve and to welcome. And those Sunday school programs on Ascension Day were a reminder to the children and to everyone else that every single person is called by Jesus and sent out to share the good news. We may not have an elaborately decorated chancel today for Ascension, but we do continue in the path of those who have gone before us. Thanks to Kim, our children learn at a very early age how to serve. They write notes, they write letters, they bring items in for school bags, they bring in food for the hungry, and they do field trips where they can meet our neighbors in need. During this pandemic, while it may have been easy to lock the doors and stand around and wait until we could gather in person again, we have claimed that we are witnesses. We are the church dispersed. The church is not in the building. The church is the people. And our people are not standing around looking up at the clouds all day, even if we're outside enjoying God's creation. Members of our church have been packing food into backpacks for blessings in a backpack. Others are putting buckets together and distributing buckets with school supplies to children and families. We have members of our church taking food to the family shelter up at the Y Camp. We have members of our church who are organizing into teams to support a community garden. We have so many members of our church writing notes and letters to members, but also to community leaders and groups. And I'm hearing about how much it means to get one of those real letters in the mail, not a text, but a real letter that I can open up and hold on to and touch and read over and over again. And as you know, we have members of our church sewing masks and gowns for the hospital. We're not standing around. And then just today, we had someone or some people, and yes, we will find out who you are, went around putting up signs of hope, not just for leaders of the church, but for their neighbors. Imagine what it means for persons living around our members who have these signs that hope isn't canceled, love isn't canceled, friendship isn't canceled, gratitude isn't canceled. Isn't that being witnesses to who we are and what we believe in Jesus Christ? You see, with the ascension, Jesus is basically passing on the mantle of leadership. And he is saying, it's up to you now. The church is a community that not only follows Jesus in the sense of listening to him and learning from him, we are a community that follows Jesus into the world in the sense of succeeding him, of taking up his mantle and carrying on his life and work so that his joy and our joy may be complete, not just here, but to the ends of the earth. The church is the community that does gather for worship, but then we are sent out into the world to be witnesses of that love and hope. And so today we hear the call to go and do something. Don't just stand there. The work of the church goes on. The needs around us persist. We can look to God's vision for the world, and then we look around us to see where God's love and the world's needs meet. But the story of the ascension is clear. We are not called to spend our time standing around looking up into the sky. The work of the disciples of Christ needs to continue. So friends, let's go in the world. Let's go in peace for the love of that world and in the name of Christ. Thanks be to God. Amen. This past week, we had the pleasure of being able to look at the finances of the church and be able to say we can continue our regular mission giving to those organizations we support locally and beyond. And that's thanks to all of you. So I extend my thanks to you for your continued giving. I want to also say thank you for the number of notes we got this week from those of you who have been joining us online. You are part of our community. Thank you for those notes. We're glad these services are bringing you hope, and we appreciate those gifts as well. And to our members, thank you for being consistent. There is a joy, as I've said before, in going and getting the mail every day and seeing how much you love your church and how we can continue to be in ministry in these days. If you wish to give online, you can go to our website at erucc.org. Again, click on the link at the top of the page that says Give to ERUCC and follow the directions from there. Thank you for blessing us, and thank you for the ways in which your gifts and your giving bless so many others.